Hi everybody, it's Annette from the Art of Intuition. And today we are going to talk about abandoned plot lines in our realities and what happens there and why some of these threads get abandoned and are they really truly abandoned. And I did a video similar to this, where I talked about it in sort of a different way. We talked about timelines that didn't happen. People we thought were going to be super important and the relationship never developed, or we thought we feel the strong connection to certain people, and then nothing really comes of it, right? And why? And how that can give us a lot of remorse over certain things, and why we feel strong connected to people and nothing comes of it. This is kind of going to be a piggyback on it, but we're going to look at it from a different angle, because there's a lot that goes into aligning our realities and a lot that goes into understanding why our current realities need to be realigned, and why if we look back on different things we experience in our human consciousness and those realities we created, why they didn't work and why they kept falling apart. Because one thing that takes us so long to learn, and I'm going to use linear time here, is because we have to take realities apart and put them back together and watch those fall apart and put them back together and take them apart and move on to a different one and try to realign that and bring someone new in, but then that doesn't work and we got to do it all over again. We do that for years. And there's a reason. And if you've done it for years, don't feel like you just can't get it, because there's a lot of reasons why it takes so long. These are not realities like our human realities where we had no standards. People will say, no, I have super high standards. No, we had no standards. We had no vibrational standards. We had human standards when we made our realities before, which meant we only looked at external things regarding the reality. We did not understand the energetic undertones of the reality. We didn't understand how that was the root of the reality. And if that was corrupted, which all our human realities are technically corrupted, it was not going to grow for very long, and it was going to become a weed that eventually we're going to have to prune. The whole reality would have to go, we'd have to prune parts of it. But we didn't see that, right? We only saw the external things we wanted. I want to go to that school. I want to have that partner. I want to have that job. I want to have that car. I want to do this, but I want to do it this way. I don't want to do it that way. I want to do everything has to be the way I want it to be. Or we went through life that way, as we try to go through life telling, I want this, I want this, I want this. Or we went the other route where we just kind of rode through life and didn't ever want to say anything. So we let everyone else decide what we wanted. We're one extreme or the other. Some people were maybe a little more middle of the road, but you leaned one way or the other, right? Human consciousness is not that hard to pull apart, It's very self-centered, it's very selfish, and it goes one way or the other, In some realities, you were going to be pushing it. In some relationships, you're going to be pushing it. In others, you're going to be along for the ride because you didn't want to rock the boat. You're either driving the boat or you were too afraid to rock the boat. And anyone who wants to tell me that's not how they went through realities, I would say we're not looking at our realities honestly, because that's how all mine were. You're either driving the boat, or you think you're driving the boat in the way you want it to be, the way our human consciousness wants it to be, or we just don't want to rock the boat, so we're letting someone else's human consciousness drive the boat right into the iceberg, and we go down like the Titanic. So those are the ways it went, right? And there's nothing magical in a sense about it. So when we get into trying to figure out the vibrational realities, we have a harder time figuring that out. We're like, God, I can't get anything to stick. Everything keeps shifting. I think I want to go one direction. That's not working out. And then I feel like I'm supposed to go this way. I almost get really good at one thing, and then I'm shifted towards something else. And it's just, you almost feel like there's no one in your reality for a long periods of time. And I've done lots of videos about why there's nobody here, and it's just us. And then, because aligning things vibrationally is a lot more difficult than aligning a reality on its external features, right? Because we don't want them to collapse. And even higher conscious realities will collapse because everything changes. But we understand why it's shifting, and we don't have the connection to them we had to the human consciousness realities. We don't have the courage to them because we're different. So we don't hold them as tight. So when they shift or they change, or we see what some people will call, I call mine like the long close, and we see them starting to close out, sometimes 6 months to a year, maybe even longer before they even close out. Usually mine are like 6 months to a year. I'll know they're starting to, the slow close, you know. We don't have the attachment to them. So we can just kind of start preparing, getting everything ready, and we start kind of making moves, because we know we got to move this over here. I got to move this over here. Okay, I got to take this and do this. And we start to understand the stuff we need to be concerned about and stuff we don't need to be concerned about, because that's not going to matter later on. Which gets me back to certain things get abandoned along the way. And these, actually, I thought about this today. I was watching something about abandoned plot lines in a show. Sometimes I'll just put on something because I feel I need to listen to it, and it kind of sparks an idea of a way to explain something differently. That might hit on it, a different way to go about it. A lot of our threads get abandoned. And because in our human consciousness we get so attached to the thread, we don't want that plot line to get abandoned. I want to have that relationship with that person. I don't want that friendship to go away. I want to explore that more. I want to expand the plot, right, in this direction. I don't want to be friends with this person. I want a romantic connection with this person. So we kind of have all these different plot lines going. Whether that's what we have right now, we expand our plot lines out. Now, you're going to do that in your higher consciousness too, realities, but we don't expand them out with the human consciousness distortions. We expand them out more for creativity. I'll loop back around to that, because we're not driven by emotion. Higher consciousness realities are not driven by emotion. They're driven by creativity. Your higher aspects are driven by creativity. You have to be creating something. You can't not be creating something. You have to continue to create. Human consciousness, we're fueled by our emotions. We go that way because that's what we feel like we want to do. And we're wild animals in that sense. We're not. I was having a discussion with someone about, I don't know, it was some beetle. They were like, oh, it's so destructive. And I'm like, the most destructive thing is humans. And if we actually ever believe we're not really looking at ourselves and the human consciousness as, a formidable opponent in a sense. Because a lot of the plot lines that we feel like got abandoned, right? Or we feel like, oh, I never got to do that, or I never got to do that. And our human will regret a lot of these things because they never quite fleshed out that way. But we technically can't have abandoned plot lines. We can have realities that don't form, right? I'm going to try to draw a little distinction between these two. We can have realities that just, this is not what's happening here, right? Like we had the video, I did a video on that. Like in this reality, I'm not working on my shit with this person. I feel a connection to this person. I want to be around this person, but we don't have that here. And maybe in eight realities, another dimension right now, we are working through our shit. So I don't have to do that here. So we're going to put that on the shelf. We'll let another aspect of me worry about you, and we'll work that out over here. And in this reality, I knew you for 2 months and that was it. In the other reality, we were married and trudged through our whole life together. And we worked our shit out over there. So in this reality, it's not necessary. Because that reality, the consciousness of me here bled over to that me there, and we're working it out over there. You think about it as many ways as you can. Just expand your higher consciousness, expand your field to feel into it and feel about how all these things are working, and you'll understand. You'll just feel the understanding. That might be a better way to put it. Like, oh yeah, I see that now. I understand why this didn't work. The plot lines that get abandoned are the ones that were not actually the purpose of the reality, right? We have all these plot lines that come in, and we want them to go a certain way. And when they don't go that way, we feel it was a missed opportunity. We feel like it was regretful because we feel like there's something we could say or we could do, and it would come to something. And some of these we see ourselves doing, like we want to have a relationship with this person, or we want to marry this person, but this person doesn't want to marry us. So we feel like there's this whole thing we've created this whole life, but you don't want to be in it. So this whole plot line kind of unravels because none of that's going to happen. Now, to me, plot lines are, I kind of weave plot lines into reality. So there are different plot lines going on in every reality. And it's just like when you watch a TV show, you're going to have an A plot line and a B plot line and a C plot line and a D plot line. And there's also billions of plot lines going on. But just for this, we're just going to say, you know, you got the A and the B and the C in every reality you're in the reality you're in currently. You know, the A one is the main one you're working on. And then you have all these B and C ones that might become bigger later, but they might completely get dropped. And when they completely get dropped, we're like, why did I completely drop that? And there are different reasons. One is it was never meant to develop that way. That wasn't the purpose of that plot line. You're going to work out that program in a different plot line later. Not that one, okay? That one over here is not going to matter. We're gonna work it out over here in a different time. You're going to be in a different frequency when you work it out. You're going to have a different person to work it out with. So don't worry about that one. That one doesn't matter right now. Sometimes they feel more like they're externally put on us in a sense but they're still ours. Like some will feel like we directly create. Now, technically we create it all, right? We call stuff forth, but sometimes if we don't understand what our frequency is putting out, we don't know why we're getting all this stuff, right? So when we make up our own reality with a person and the plot never goes that way, you know, we get disgruntled. We're just like, fuck, that sucks. I wanted to go a certain way and it didn't go that way. Okay, well, never mind. We're gonna move on from that plot line. But when we're presented with certain things and all of a sudden it gets dropped, you know, if I'm going to use kind of mundane, you know, just like mundane examples, like you get a call about a job in Connecticut and there's a headhunter and you have all this thing, and then all of a sudden it just gets dropped. You never hear back from the person, you know, none of it ever happens. And you're like, what happened to that whole thing? You know, am I working that out somewhere else? Technically, yes. B, we shifted frequencies. The minute you shift a frequency, you shift the reality. Technically, that call never happened, right? So when we shift a frequency, some people call it quantum jumping into another one. All the things that just happened that never came back around technically never happened in the reality we're in now. It was a plot in a different reality. Almost like, and in this reality, it feels more like a plot hole because it completely got dropped. It's like, well, what happened to that? A lot of us have had things happen where we almost get a peek of it and then it gets dropped. Now, normally, in our human consciousness, the ones that got dropped normally stay dropped. Okay? Because when we shifted just enough to get out of a certain timeline, but at the time we didn't see it like that. Like we just wondered, why didn't that person ever call me back? You know, I went out, even if we take it, I went on a date with this person and I never heard from him again. They ghosted me. Well, technically, did you ever go on a date with them, or did I shift a frequency and now that never happened? So it's a plot hole. You know, it's like this person is gone and I don't know what happened to them. They're just no longer there because we shift so fast. Technically, none of that happened. So there's that too. And then you're going to get into these other plot holes. And these other kind of these dangling threads, or, you know, I kind of like the plot line. I kind of like the plot line. They're kind of there. And in higher consciousness, I feel like a lot of them will kind of start to anchor in. And we can see the vibrational anchoring in of some of these things. And then they just don't happen. Because we don't have to go through the reality. Because vibrationally we couldn't line it up. It just wasn't highest the line, and we just said no. You know, so we feel like, oh, it didn't come in. But we can see why. So as you go into your higher states of consciousness, more in your ascension process, where you're anchoring in higher consciousness, you're anchoring in higher aspects, a lot of these things become clearer, and we feel like all these plot lines that kind of got dropped in our human realities and even in our awakening and beginning of our ascension, we kind of understand, we start to see it happening, that vibrationally we just can't line them up. Now, when we're when our unconscious becomes our consciousness, and we don't really have an unconsciousness, we don't register anything unconsciously anymore. We can see it consciously on why this isn't working. Vibrationally, this can't line up. And you can feel it energetically. This can't line up. This can't happen. Certain things I'll see, and someone will say, you know, even easy stuff like, oh, we'll go get a cup of coffee. And I'll know we're never getting that cup of coffee. You know, it's never going to line up. It's not going to happen. It's just, that's never happening. We're never getting that cup of coffee. We're never going to, or we'll catch up, you know, like I'll call you and we'll catch up. That's never going to happen. And I say never say never, but you get my point here. You're like, that's not going to happen. And they feel like these kind of dangling threads. Why didn't that happen? Vibrationally, it's not aligned. Vibration, the reality we're in now, this is either something we're going to deal with later or something we're going to deal with in this reality in a different way to work through that program. And we don't need this. They're kind of, the plot lines are so many that some just get dropped. And then they're just not pivotal to what we're trying to do right now. And they become kind of inconsequential and they don't matter. And we can feel that coming. We can almost see the ones that just kind of drop off and they don't matter. But in our human consciousness, when we were having all these things happen, we couldn't see the unconscious part. We were like, yeah, this doesn't align, we're just going to drop this. Or we just shifted enough where this person can't be in our reality anymore. Especially things that we felt like were kind of traumatic. Like if anyone, you know, someone didn't call you back, or you got ghosted, or like all these things we had seen, we felt like were going to happen and they just never kind of came in. And there's also the part where we can start talking about a reality before it's here, and then we shift vibration the other way. And now we're out of that reality where that actually took place because we got in our ego about it happening. So you will see a lot of plot lines that when you look back in your human consciousness and go, wow, whatever happened to that? You know, why did that get dropped? Why did I drop that one? Why did I drop that one? And you realize it's just, there's so many different reasons. And it's sometimes fun to explore. And we explore a lot of this stuff. A lot of people will say, why do you want to go back and look at this stuff? For a large part of our ascension process, going back and rectifying why things didn't work helps us understand how we build now. And why when we're trying to build it the same way, why isn't it working? It's not working. I'm in a higher consciousness, but I still can't construct a reality that feels any better right now. Because we still try to construct it the old way. And when we go back and see, oh, why did all these fail? We start to see the threads, see the things that didn't matter. Sometimes we try to hold on so hard to these plot lines that are trying to drop off that we just double down on things that are never going to happen because they're not supposed to. And we just cling to them so hard that we cause so much suffering and grief, that we release so much suffering and grief through all our misery going through the timeline that we raise ourselves out of the timeline anyway. So it doesn't matter in that sense either. So as we start to really shift and we start to explore our realities, look at your current reality. Look at, like, if you had to list down, okay, what is my main plot line? Do I have dangling plot lines here? What are the other plot lines? Do these plot lines matter? Am I really trying to hold on to these plot lines that are trying to drop off, that might have felt vibrationally important, but I'm not able to align them? Maybe not ever, definitely not now. Do they need to be here? Are these plot lines for the future? You know, or these kind of like end credit scenes in a movie where this is the next movie? You know, this is the next reality. You're getting a preview here. We've talked a lot of times about that. It's not so much an empty plot hole. It's just not yet. This is a preview. Is it a plot hole or a preview? Maybe that should be the title of this video. Is this a plot hole? Is this an abandoned plot line, or is it a preview for something else? It can be both sometimes. It can be a huge plot hole in the reality we're in, and it can be abandoned. And you might not see it again for a long time, and it might not even come through the same way. It might be from a totally different person. It might be a totally different avenue you go down, but it's energetically the same thing. Whereas in our human consciousness, we didn't understand, oh my God, it is energetically the same thing. It's just I'm in a different consciousness, so it's technically not energetically the same thing. And I can see that. You know, I understand that now. Whereas there, I didn't understand that. That like, oh, and that's what we would call in our human consciousness or in our awakening and beginning of ascension. It's like a karmic loop. Oh my God, I'm on this, and I keep doing the same thing. because it's the same plot line that keeps coming back in. You know, it gets abandoned here, it comes back in here because we're still working through it. Even if it's not the same people, that doesn't matter. That's how you want to dress the reality. We can have a dress rehearsal with all new people. It doesn't matter. You know, it's still the same thing. Energetically, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The core constructs of the reality are the same. Now, technically, that's not going to be true because it's never going to be exactly the same, but you get my point in that, I think. So whether it's a preview for a new reality, it feels like these are just kind of some abandoned plot lines, like, because now we don't have to do them anymore. You know, vibrationally, I achieved that vibration without going through that. So yeah, I don't have to do that anymore. And it's funny when we talk about, we might start talking about things we want to do, and human consciousness gets really fixed on something you say. You know, you say like, oh, you said you were going to do this, or you said you might go here, or you said you might move to here, and I'm like, yeah, that was 2 years ago, or that was 3 minutes ago, or that was 3 months ago. I don't even feel like I got to do that anymore. I have no desire to do that anymore. So it might feel to others like certain things get abandoned because they're just not aligned. You know, they're just not important enough right now. You know, they're not the main thing, and we feel after a while, I was like, yeah, nah. It's not the main plot right now because it wasn't highest line then, and it is not highest line now, and it might never be highest line. So, all right, I'm gonna leave it at that. So, enjoy your plot lines. Really look at if you're holding on, trying to stretch out, and really bump something up to be the main plot line when it's definitely different. And you might have the same program running through numerous plot lines, which can be interesting to kind of look at too. Okay, keep practicing the art of intuition.